Today we are going to be talking about cell transport. And there are 4 different types of cell transport. Today we're going to be talking about 2 of them. The first is called diffusion. And diffusion is how molecules are going to move within a cell. It's the process that involves the random movement of molecules from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration toward equilibrium. So there is a lot to unpack here. Let's start with the basics. Diffusion is what makes it so that you can smell freshly baked cookies as soon as you walk into a room. And it's why food coloring, when you drop it into a glass of water, will turn the whole glass blue. We say that diffusion is the random movement of molecules because the movement of any individual molecule is random. We cannot predict which way any single molecule will move. However, we can predict the net or the general movement of molecules. And that's going to be from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration. But to understand that, we're going to need to be able to understand concentration. Concentration refers to the closeness of molecules. This is a concentration gradient. So I'm going to draw a box here. And that is the space that our molecules are going to be in. And then if we have those molecules really close together, so let's draw a whole bunch of molecules really close together, we would say that this is a high concentration. And let's say that over here, we only have a couple of molecules and they're pretty well spaced out. This is a low concentration. When we say that it's a gradient, what we mean is that it progresses from high concentration to low concentration. So we've got sort of a medium concentration here in the middle. And then we've got low concentration by the time we get to this end. So a concentration gradient is simply when the molecules are closer together on one side and they're further apart on the other side. When you make a flavored drink from a powder, like a Gatorade powder, what you do is you dissolve those molecules in water, and the more water you add, the further apart the molecules will be, and the less concentrated the drink will be. If you want to have a stronger flavor, then you're going to need to have the molecules closer together, which means having less water for the molecules to spread out in. A spray of perfume is going to work the exact same way. So let's draw a little bottle here. My spray of perfume is going to have really, really concentrated molecules close to the bottle, but by the time we get to this other side of the room, the molecules are going to be much, much more spread out. So highly concentrated molecules, and then further away, the lower the concentration of those smell molecules. So let's do a little bit of practice, just picking which has the higher concentration. So which tea drink has the highest concentration of milk? Tea drink C is the lightest in color, which means that there's more milk molecules in that teacup than in the other teacups. So C has the highest concentration. Which icing has the highest concentration of pink? Again, the answer here is C. That's the darkest pink, so we know that there is a higher concentration of pink molecules in the dark pink icing. Which circled area has the highest concentration of cows? All of these circles are the same size, but there are more cows in circle B, so that's the one that has the highest concentration of cows. Those cows are closer together than the other cows. Which circle has the highest concentration of birds? Circle A has the highest concentration of birds. And which circle area has the highest concentration of sneeze? Circle B has the highest concentration of sneeze. So when baking bread or spraying perfume, we know that the molecules that are closest to the source are going to have the strongest smelling area because that's where those molecules are closest together. However, over time, those molecules are going to slowly diffuse throughout the whole room. So what's really happening here is that the molecules are moving from areas of high concentration towards areas of low concentration. They're moving from high to low. Now, because the molecules move randomly, we know that some of these molecules are actually going to stay closer to the can, and some of them might even move this direction. But overall, the net movement is going to be from high to low because these molecules are going to try to become evenly spaced. And we know this from experience. We know that if you spray perfume in the room, eventually it will smell the same no matter if you're in this high concentration area, like closer to the container, or in this low concentration area further away, because eventually those areas will have the same concentration. So this is the rule with diffusion. Molecules are always going to move from high to low. So these molecules are always going to move from high concentration to low concentration until they reach what we call equilibrium. So equilibrium means that the molecules are evenly spread out. So if I draw my concentration box again, when the molecules are all evenly spaced or evenly spread out, we call this point equilibrium. And sure, some of the molecules are going to be closer together than other molecules, but on the whole, the molecules are pretty evenly spaced. Now, at this point, the molecules, they don't stop moving. Instead, they're just moving randomly. So at equilibrium, the molecules are evenly spread out and there's no concentration gradient because all of the molecules are the same approximate distance from each other. Once the molecules are at equilibrium, they're just going to keep mixing around while staying evenly spread out. So let's do some practice with molecules in different scenarios. So what you're going to tell me is which way are the molecules going to diffuse? Which way will the yellow molecules diffuse? The yellow molecules are moving randomly, but with a net movement towards the bottom of the page, because that's where the lowest concentration is. Once they reach equilibrium, they'll move randomly in all directions. All right, which way will the green molecules diffuse? These green molecules are already at equilibrium, so they're going to continue to move randomly in all directions. Which way will the orange molecules diffuse? These orange molecules are going to move to the left because that's the area of lowest concentration. So let's review. Molecules are going to move from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration until the molecules are evenly spread out. This process of moving from high to low concentration is called diffusion. And diffusion doesn't take energy. It happens based on the random movement of molecules. When molecules are evenly spaced out, we say that they are at equilibrium. Which of these is an example of diffusion? Making tea and using air freshener are both examples of diffusion. In both cases, the molecules spread out naturally until they've reached equilibrium. Facilitated diffusion is a specific type of diffusion. And facilitated diffusion is the movement of molecules from high concentration to low concentration, through a transport or a carrier protein. So this is what happens in order to move molecules into or out of cells. Each cell is surrounded by a cell membrane, and the cell membrane is made up of two layers of molecules called phospholipids. This is important because phospholipids don't form a rigid structure. They're not locked in place, which means that small molecules can move between them. So a cell membrane looks kind of like this. We've got some phospholipids, which are these circle things with these tails hanging down, and those are going to be arranged in two layers. So the circle parts form the outside of the layer, and then the inside have these tails. And then this is going to make like a big circle around the cell. But there are these proteins that are stuck in the cell membrane. So we've got more phospholipids on this side. And we've got this transport protein or carrier protein in the middle. And what happens is if we have a really small molecule, it can go right through the phospholipid bilayer, and it can go into or out of the cell. And that's going to happen by diffusion. But if you have something big, then it can't go directly through the phospholipid bilayer. So something big has to go through this carrier or transport protein. Now, they're still going to move from high concentration to areas of low concentration. So this here is the cell membrane. And this is an area of high concentration. And this is an area of low concentration. So the molecules are still moving from high to low. But the facilitated diffusion part is that now they're going through, they're being helped or facilitated through the cell membrane by this transport protein. So, which of these diagrams shows diffusion? Even though the molecules are all moving through a membrane, the blue molecules are the only ones that are diffusing because they're the only ones that are moving from high concentration to low concentration. Now, it's important to note that molecules can move through these transport proteins in either direction, but they're always going to move from high concentration to low concentration. That's the diffusion part. The facilitated part means that they're helped. So facilitated diffusion is diffusion that is helped by a protein, because otherwise the molecules are too large to move through our cell membrane. So let's practice. Does this diagram represent facilitated diffusion? No. Even though the molecules are moving from high concentration to low concentration, they're moving directly through the membrane. This is just regular diffusion. Does this diagram represent facilitated diffusion? Yes, the molecules are being facilitated through the membrane by a protein, and they're moving from high to low concentration. Does this diagram represent facilitated diffusion? No. While the molecules are moving through a protein, they're not moving from high to low concentration. Does this diagram represent facilitated diffusion? Yes, this is also facilitated diffusion. Let's recap. Molecules move around the inside of the cell by diffusion, but if the molecules are small enough, they can actually move right between the phospholipids, and that can make it so that they move into or out of the cell. It's all by diffusion. But if the molecules are too big to fit between the phospholipids of the cell membrane, then they can be facilitated across the membrane by these proteins. This process is called facilitated diffusion. In both diffusion and facilitated diffusion, the molecules are moving from areas of high concentration to low concentration. Neither of these processes require energy. So there you have it, facilitated diffusion and diffusion.